And oops. Why is this not recording? Oh my gosh. All right, 15 more minutes or so, and then you guys got to go off and do your own. I promise. Bentley, that's a killer looking headset, dude. Okay, who broke my computer? Why is it not recording? There we go. I was going to say, I was going to blame Alina. Alina's fault it's not recording. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your first mass. Yes, your first mass. We are now a Catholic school, guys, and we're going to have mass today. Obviously, I meant to say math. M-A-T-H. Math. I don't know where mass came from. It's a coffee thing. That's just what we're going to say. Leo, we're not getting massages. I'm sorry. Oh, Braulio, is that a self-portrait of you in chat? Oh, it could have fooled me. Who's got me unmuted? Mute yourself, please. That's not what I want. I want to share this tab. So, ladies and gentlemen, Victor, mute yourself. Thank you. All right. So I have chat open. So if you have questions as we go along, go ahead and type them. Now, I say that with a word of caution. It is very likely that I'm going to answer your question during the course of me just doing this thing. Okay? So with that being said, wait until you ask your questions. There will be spots that I specifically ask for questions, okay? Do me a favor, go ahead and turn your cameras off, Josue and Atilia, only because I think your faces might be getting recorded right now too. And then that way, it's just when we're doing our thing, it's just my beautiful, shiny, bald head and my lesson plans. Or slides. So we're going to start talking about the number line. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you've been using a number line since you were in kindergarten. It was actually one of the first tools that you used when it came to counting and when it came to adding and subtracting. Now, you've probably not used a number line for many, many years. Probably the last time you did a number line was if you're working with decimals and fractions and you're understanding like where they fit, maybe with multiplication and division. But for the most part, you've probably not worked with a number line for quite some time. So that's okay. Our goal for the next couple of days is that we're going to use positive and negative numbers to represent and compare quantities in real-world contexts, as well as explaining the meaning of zero in each situation. Now, that's what we like to call teacher-ese. It's where teachers use a bunch of really big, fancy words to make it seem like they're smart and to be impressive. So I admit it, I'm guilty of speaking teacher-ese when I really want to impress people. Sometimes I pull out the big $5 words and the awesome vocabulary. Right now, though, I'm going to speak student-ese. And that's simply just going to be, we're going to understand the difference between positive and negative numbers. That's the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to understand the purpose of zero because, believe it or not, I hope to convince you of that this week, zero is the most important number we have. We'll talk about that later. And the last thing is we're going to talk about and being able to identify and plot positive and negative numbers on a number line. So those are the three things. This right here is this, but in normal English. Because, like I said, teacher-ese, we just try to sound impressive. Sometimes we just make life more difficult. So we're going to start with number lines. And in number lines, this is what we used. We learned to count. We learned to add. So why am I taking you back to a lesson that you learned 7 years ago? 6 years ago? Some number of years ago. That's because teachers have been lying to you. Yes, teachers lie all the time. And more specifically in math, we've only been teaching you half of everything. It's because we've only been working with one side of the number line. So we know this is guaranteed. You should know this. This came from previous years, that when we're using a number line, the number 0 is our starting point, right? That should be common sense. You start counting at 0, go up to 1. When we count 1, 2, 3, 4, we're counting how far away from 0 we actually are. So if I was to pick my favorite number, 27, which is not on the number line, but I'm going to be obnoxious, right? 27 means I have taken 27 steps away from 0. And if we add, we're going to move to the right. So 2 plus 2 means we start at the number 2, and we take 2 steps, and we end on the number 4. The reverse being, if we start on 16 and we take 4 steps away, we land on 12. 16 minus 4 is 12. This is common sense. This is law. This has been set in stone since kindergarten. If you do not remember this, get those cobwebs out of your brains. So you may have learned when we do lines, and I think this is a 4th or 5th grade standard. When we talk about lines, we have a line. It goes infinitely in 2 directions. And the same thing is true for our number line. We purposely hid the left half of the number line. Now, why do you think we would hide half of the numbers? Does anybody have an idea? You want to type it in chat or unmute yourself? Why would we hide half of the numbers from you? This will get you points when we do our point system, by the way, just so you know, if that helps. You can unmute or you can type, one of the two. Why, I'll tell you myself then, ladies and gentlemen. We do this because negative numbers are an abstract idea. There's something that you can't physically touch. If I'm like, hey, everybody, find something that has 3 things next to you. Well, I've got 3 writing utensils right here, right? And I can count 1, 2, 3. They're physical, tangible things that I can count. You can't do that with negative numbers. Hey, everybody, find a find -1 pencils. What does that even mean? Well, it means a bunch of nonsense. So we teach you only half of it because, well, A, learning the right half is complicated enough when you're in kindergarten. But B, you can touch the right side of the number line. You can't touch the left side. So we now have to figure out how to break up our number line so that it's easier to understand what's going on. This means that we're going to take the number 0 and we are going to give it new responsibilities. In this case, 0 is not our smallest number anymore. When we were talking growing up, you're like, well, what's the smallest number? And some people are like, 1. 1's the smallest number. And then you always had that kid in class who's like, actually 0 is smaller than 1 because 0 is nothing. I was that kid when I was in school. It's okay. I embrace it. Well, we now have numbers that are smaller than 0. So we can't say 0 is the smallest number anymore. But what we can say is that 0 is now the middle of all of the numbers that have ever existed. It's our bench post. It's our signpost. It's a border. It splits up the positive and the negative sides of our number line. So we do have numbers that are in fact smaller than 0, and they're the negative numbers. The numbers that are larger than 0 are still always going to be larger than 0. They're the positive numbers that you've been working with for 7 years. Okay? Nothing really has changed. I'm just adding on a new layer. So 0, and this is important, and this comes up on your tests. Okay, this will be on iLearn. Well, at least I think it was on iLearn. I don't really know if it was or not. It was on iStep at one point, but it's also on your unit test. 0 is neither positive or negative. Okay, we have positive numbers, we have negative numbers, and we got 0. 0 has kind of its own thing. It splits between positive and negative. It's neither though. 0 is 0. It's its own thing. It marches to its own beat. So when we look at negative numbers, and this is really, 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 really important, and this is what makes people get negative numbers wrong all the time. So if you weren't paying attention, first off, shame on you. You should be. But second, you need to pay attention. So when we look at our new number line right here, we notice that if we look at 0, we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is new, or this is not new. This is the same. But when we look here, our numbers are actually going backwards. And that's because we've gotten used to reading numbers left to right, left being the smallest, right being the largest. But we got a problem. Because when we look at this, we're like, well, I know 5 is bigger than 4, but -5 is to the left of -4. And if we assume that this way is smaller and this way is larger, this is making my head hurt. So we're going to go back to kindergarten for a second. No, you may not go to the bathroom right now. No, get your finger out of your nose. Sit down, stop squealing. I hope nobody pooped their pants, right? That's my impression of kindergarten. Leo, I hope you didn't poop your pants. Now, when we look at these numbers, we were talking about this earlier. They just simply mean we're counting our steps away from 0. So right here, we got number 5. Where's my mouse? 5 is 5 steps away from 0, and I can prove it by counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So, boom, look at that. I even programmed that in. The same thing works with negative numbers. Okay? We're going backwards on the number line, but we're really not. We're still counting the number of steps we are away from 0. If I look at -3, it's negative because it's on the left side of the number line. Okay? Everything to the left of 0 is a negative number. Everything to the right of 0 is a positive number. It's -3 because if I start at 0 and I count, I go 1, 2, 3. I'm 3 steps away from 0. But how do I know if I'm this 3 steps away from 0 or this 3 steps away from 0? Well, that's where the negative comes in. Technically, if we are to be mathematically correct, this should be +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, etc. We don't write the positive because we're just going to naturally assume it's a positive number. It's like decimals. We don't write the decimal if we don't need it. There's a decimal right here next to -5, -5.0, but we don't need it, so we don't write it, okay? The blue side is on the negative side because it's on the left. Green side is on the positive side because it's on the right. Now, at some point, I'm going to have a notes page for you to fill out. I've not figured out how I wanted to do this. In the traditional classroom setting, I used a math notebook. And if you guys have a math notebook, if you got an extra notebook around and you want to make a math notebook, then I would encourage you, when you see the lined pages right here, that means I want you to write it in a notebook. Well, it did. You don't have to, but I'm going to guarantee that if you do this, it might actually help you. So we have 4 pieces of new learning that we need to remember. I'm going to recap them right now. At some point, like I said, if you want to put this in a math notebook, you'll be able to have access to the video. You can pause it and you can write to your heart's content. Now, new learning number 1. There are 2 sides of a number line, both of which extends infinitely in opposite directions. Now, infinitely means it just goes on forever. It's a mathematical concept. It looks like a sideways number 8, right? Can you even see that? I don't know if you can see that or not. I Probably wrote it too high. Let's do this again. So that's infinity. It means it just goes on forever. Now, with this understanding, we have a positive infinity and we have a negative infinity. Because we now know we can go two directions on a number line. We can go to the left and we can go to the right. And we can keep going to the left forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and we'll never get there, but we're approaching negative infinity. Same thing for positive infinity if we go to the right. So if we say number two, numbers less than 0, smaller or less than, with the alligator Edie face, are called negative numbers. Numbers that are greater than 0 or larger, or the backwards alligator Edie face, are called positive numbers. So if you live on the left side, you're negative. You live on the right side, you're positive. This also technically works with vertical number lines. If we're above positive, if we're below negative. Think of a thermometer when you think of a vertical number line. That's all it is, okay? 0 is now the border between positive and negative. It's like your border gatehouse. It separates the positives from the negatives, or the negatives from the positives, however you want to say it. And it itself is not positive or negative. Okay? Decimals and fractions are best friends from 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. You may also have positive and negative decimals or fractions. We're not going to get into that right away. We're going to just work with our whole numbers because this is an abstract thought. But decimals and fractions can be positive or negative. Now, with that being said, we're today going to practice using number lines, and we're going to start dabbling with the negative and the positive ends of life. On your own, you are going to work on IXL, M2, and M3. Your goal is to get your score above a 90. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't get above a 90, A, when we pull small groups, that's a good idea that I need to talk with you about that specifically. But B, you can get to 90. If you get to 100, I will reward you with a point. Okay? This is your first opportunity to start earning points for your team. You get to 100, you get a point. Now, if you get 100 in both M2 and M3, then you get 2 points. Okay? Points add up real fast. What questions do you have right now? Unmute yourself if you do. I know I threw a lot of information at you.